We think about middle meats in the pork business. The loin is a loss leader. It's worth less than ears. It's worth less than face masks. It's worth less than bungs. So we have variety meats that can outpace that.
Welcome to MeatsPad. In collaboration with the American Meat Science Association, it's a platform dedicated to share breakthrough knowledge that is accessible to the global meat industry. On each episode, you'll have the opportunity to listen and learn from meat specialists and professionals about the whole meat industry. This podcast is brought to you by the U.S. Meat Export Federation,
U.S. Pork,
Ultrasource, equipment and supplies for the meat and food industry, EFA, slaughter and meat processing tools.
Hello, meat folks. Welcome back to the MeatsPad podcast. This is your hungry and humble host, Phil Bass, here for yet another discussion with some industry leaders. And this time, we got the pork check off, guys. This is pretty cool. If you're not familiar with it, I'm going to let Dr. David Newman tell us a little bit more about that. So, David, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, glad to be here, Phil. Thank you. Glad to be here today.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Since I've already kind of laid the groundwork, tell our listeners about the pork checkoff. And remember, we have predominantly meat processors listening to this, meat science students as well. And tell us about what pork checkoff is and why it's important.
Okay. All right. So we'll give you a pork 101 in terms of how the checkoff system works, just as a reminder here in the U.S. So going back, 1986 is when the Pork Act and Order was actually launched. This was also launched at the same time and year as the U.S. beef checkoff system was. So some of your listeners are probably familiar with that. Here in the U.S., from a checkoff perspective, this is how it works from a value proposition. So we have something called the Pork Act and Order. So in a checkoff system, you literally have congressional oversight. So we have oversight from USDA AMS, and we have a very specific set of order that we do on behalf of producers. In the case of the pork checkoff, that is research, education, and promotion exclusively. So research, as an example, could be research around pork quality. If we think from a meat science, it could be around meat processing. It could also be around production. So how a nutritional ingredient impacts efficiency or impacts meat quality. When we think about education, we think about our quality assurance programs, usually first and foremost. Think pork quality assurance. You know, there's a beef quality assurance as well. That's paid for through checkoff funds. So we have another initiative called We Care. And those are ethical principles tied to the environment, tied to animal welfare. And so we use those both domestically and internationally to keep confidence with our buyers that we are doing what's right. So that's an example of education. And then promotion, which is what I oversee at MPB and the checkoff system, is just what that word says. It's promoting pork. So while we don't own a product, what we actually do is we will work every day on behalf of U.S. pig farmers to work with packer processors, to work with retailers, work with food service companies. We'll bring data and insights to them to say, here's what we're learning about multicultural consumers. Here's what we're learning about retail efforts. And we will leverage checkoff dollars in promotional campaigns to try to boost both volume and value of U.S. pork. So in a nutshell, it's a huge piece, right? Checkoff goes beyond national into state organizations as well. The next piece is how it's funded. And this is where it gets uniquely different between beef and pork. So on the pork side, we take 35 cents of every $100 value. And that goes into, think of it as a checking account that goes into the pork checkoff that can then be used for research, education, and promotion. So 35 cents of value. So our checkoff is all about value. When hogs are high, checkoff is high. When hogs are low, checkoff can be low, if that makes sense. In the beef business, it's different. They use a different formula they created in the 1980s, where it is a dollar amount per head, $1 every time that animal trades transactions. So we are uniquely funded very differently. And even the act and order on the beef side is a little different than it is on the pork side, but it's still a bulk of what we do is around promotion, of pork on behalf of our producers. So that's kind of the lay of the land about checkoff.
That's perfect. Well, and I'm glad that you made the distinction between the two, because I mean, we do talk a bit about beef on this program. I'm glad we're talking more about pork now, and a number of our listeners out there may have wondered why they get charged what they get charged when they sell animals, when they're buying animals. What's that negotiation? And
Yeah.
that's a good that you've laid the foundation for folks to understand what it is that the pork board does. Now you mentioned the buyers and promotion side, and this is where I get really excited about things, especially from a meat science perspective. Is let's go down that road if you don't mind. And the biggest question I have right now, especially because my fascination, and many folks know this out there about me, but my fascination is with fabrication and making better meat cuts using that thousands of year old technology called a knife for the betterment of our farmers and ranchers, right? And so what's going on out there that you could tell about as far as maybe innovations current or on the horizon that's really helping promote pork and get folks eating more of it?
Yeah. Well, Phil, I think you and I speak the same language. So maybe your listeners know or don't know, but I come from a meat science background, PhD in meat science, muscle biology, and this fabrication piece has been something that I am very passionate about as well. And so if we let's just cut right to some examples. Okay. One of the big things that I've encouraged my team to work on is let's talk about every day when we think about the future consumer of pork. This is an important segue into fabrication. All right. Baby boomers, let's just cut this down to where we're at. Baby boomers have carried the bulk of pork consumption in this country for decades. And as baby boomers start to exit the market, they're either exiting the market quite literally, or they are consuming less red meat overall. And so they have been a heavy carrier of both fresh and processed meats for decades. And so we've really got to think about who is the future consumer. The future consumer is millennial, Gen Zs, and then it will be alpha beta behind them, right? When you look at our nutrition efforts, for example, they are focused very specifically on millennial moms. Why millennial moms? Millennial moms have the purchasing power. They're making the purchasing decisions in the households. And for the next 5 to 8 years, it is estimated that millennial moms will give birth to 1 million children a year in the United States. So not only are they the future consumer themselves, they are creating the future consumer. And we know, right? Kids tell families what to eat. We need to keep pork top of mind and talk about that. The second thing that's really important is not only is it generational, it's also about multicultural. Multicultural is an enormous component of the future of pork consumption. So Hispanic, African-American, Asian, over 90% of the population growth in this country for the last decade has came from those demographics. Okay. And that's going to continue to be the case. Here's why this matters when we talk about your fabrication piece is if we think about cultural relevance, especially with multicultural, very well, Phil, all over the world, pork carcasses are fabbed differently. So thinking about what makes something culturally relevant, I sometimes I've been frustrated as being an active member of the pork business for the last 25 years of saying, well, some days we just have that whack it and stack it mentality. This is what we do. We cut meat, we put it in a box, and we ask people to sell it. And we can't think differently about that. And so I told you I was going to get a deep dive on this. So one of the things we're looking at right now is the loin. We talk about beef and we talk about the middle meats. I mean, that's the driver of value, right? $16 ribs. Think about where strips are at, tenders are at. Unbelievable, right? Every day I tell our pork producers, $1.50 loins are an insult. You should be insulted. That is not a compliment. When my neighbor stops by and says, "Hey, Newman, you'd be so proud of me. They had loins at my local retailer for 99 cents a pound, so I filled my freezer." I go, "That's not a compliment. That's an insult to the 60,000 pork producers in this country." I mean, literally, I'm losing money on that. So the reason this matters is because the loin has drugged down the cutout value for more than 40 years. We think about middle meats in the beef business, they drive the value, right? And then along with grind. We think about middle meats in the pork business, the loin is a loss leader. It's worth less than ears, it's worth less than face masks, worth less than bungs. So we have variety meats that can outpace that. And when we're thinking 16 or 18% of the carcass, why don't we think about innovating this differently? And innovation is a broad definition, right? It could be how we cut the loin, but it could also be how we prepare the loin, whether it's something ready to eat or something ready for QSR. So those are some examples of things that we do, and I think it's okay to think differently, and because we haven't changed anything in 40 years, and we kind of tend to talk to ourselves. But we always end up in the same spot. You know what that is? That's the definition of insanity.
Yeah, that's madness. Yep. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I love what you're talking about. Yes, you and I are thinking a lot of the same along the same lines, and I agree with you. It's a sin that pork is so inexpensive. But I also tell all of my students that I interact with, if you want red meat in the diet, go buy pork loins. It is a great value, but at the same time, you're absolutely right. I mean, what do we need to do to encourage more value to that category? And maybe you can tell me a little bit or expand a little bit on that.
Since 1883, Ultrasource has been a trusted supplier to the food industry. Ultrasource provides superior kill floor, processing, packaging, and labeling equipment and operational supplies.
Yeah, well, it's our job on behalf of U.S. pork producers to help identify the problem and then see what we can do to help solve the problem. We're not a packer processor. We're not doing further processing. But what we are doing is representing with those dollars, and we can partner with people to help understand that. So right now we're looking at some food service innovation. I'm telling you, if you can't see value in the pork business 2024, then you are blind.
Yeah,
right?
You're stuck in your box. Yeah, open the box, get out.
You're blind to the market conditions. When we look at the price of competing proteins, we look at where we could potentially place pork. Golly, there's a lot of opportunity. So food service companies, QSRs, they're starting to realize that too. So when we think about, we're doing some really interesting projects right now with some major food service companies on innovation on products around not only the loin, but also looking at products like ground pork items. Ground pork is blowing up in this country, and anybody listening to this knows if they've ever had a pork burger, they know how good it is, right? But they also know there's a value proposition associated with that on a menu. But we're also working on the culinary side. So in this loin task force, we've identified a handful of things that are really important to talk about. One is culinary innovation. This is going to try to keep us from talking to ourselves. We actually have a program that we've been talking about launching here in January this year, of this following year, 2024. Some work we potentially will be doing with Culinary Institute of America on culinologists, which end up, this is individuals who go to they go to culinary school thinking they're going to be a chef, right? They think they're going to be, the next Food Network star, and they actually end up going to work for, major protein companies, right? They go to work for some of these innovative major protein companies or further processed companies to say, how do I develop a menu item for Wendy's with the equipment they have, right, and a process they have that we can make this thing tasty, and the margin is still there. And so, or something, could be something, a multitude of different chains. Think about the success of the McRib, right? And you can just make all the analogies you want to make from that. Pork hasn't done a great job of innovating in that space. So there's big opportunity out here, and I think that as you look at where we're at, our producers are hurting. They are hurting. We've never seen challenging times like we're seeing right now. So now's the time to innovate and think differently. And so we've got a lot of really fun stuff. AMSA. I mean, I spend a lot of time talking to Colette on a weekly basis, and AMSA is right in the middle of that in terms of this Loin Task Force and some work that we're doing to innovate. And also at the same time, listen, this isn't just about like, crazy innovation about a chef, something unrealistic. Even though we do need to look into cooking technologies like sous vide, we need to look into that. We need to look into, how many consumers are cooking with air fryers right now. Appliance is huge. So, but at the same time, everything we do needs to be science backed. So that's where the meat science community plays a big role in this is where are we at in terms of pork quality? Where are we at in terms of pork eating quality, whether it's mouthfeel research or it is nutrition research, right? Because if you look at all the data we collect on insights, here's how you break the pork business down. What are the three most important things to consumers? Okay, affordability is number one. Number two is taste and flavor. We've got to drive home taste and flavor. There's something that makes you eat beef. There's something that makes you eat pork, right? So taste and flavor is our number one attribute into the business. Our number one barrier to consumption is nutrition.
Really?
So we have got, yes, absolutely. And the data screams it. And especially when we talk about multicultural audiences. So, imagine that you're trying to position a product that everybody thinks is flavorful and indulgent, and they're convinced that it's probably killing them. There's a conundrum, right? So, but you guys know this. All the listeners know this. Go to your doctor, slightly overweight. Go to your doctor with elevated blood pressure, and what are they going to ask you, Phil?
Well, what are you eating? Yeah.
Yeah. Do you eat red meat?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh
Do you
yeah.
eat red meat? Right? They don't talk about sugar. They don't talk about all the soda you might drink. They don't talk about, it's like red meat's the culprit. So it's not the culprit. So we've got to subvert people's ingrained belief about protein, about even the micro minerals we want to talk about. Let's talk about choline, selenium, right? B6, B12, iron, zinc, niacin, all the things that people on this podcast know well. But we've got to really subvert that with our future consumer so that they understand that we play a crucial role in a nutritious diet. So it's fun. No 2 days are the same. I'll tell you that.
That's all right. Well, oh gosh, man, I wish we could. Maybe we'll turn this one into a 3-hour podcast. I think that's important for us to do right now. No, I'm kidding. But you've hit on so many different great avenues. Pork is absolutely affordable. It tastes great. I find it. I guess the first thing that most people think of when they think of pork is bacon, and that's always going to be the one that's like, well, it's our driving factor for value right now, but at the same time, that's probably the biggest culprit in the medical community, which I could wave a flag on that one too. Good protein in the animal protein in the diet in any form is going to be good for you. You're getting, I preach real hard about meat in one's diet and the right amino acids that they're getting. You can get protein from plant sources, but you're not going to get it in the right mix that meat can bring. And my goodness, it's such a power-packed nutrient, and there's no question that it should be in one's diet. I mean, that's just it. So
absolutely. Well, hey, don't forget, I was trained by Eric Berg, so when we get into this role of meat in the diet, he gets pretty passionate,
yes,
right?
Yes, he does. Yeah.
But that's really the story to tell, right? And there's a story to tell about fat as well, right? About animal fats in the diet and good fats versus bad fats, and that's another important component of this aspect that we've got to really consider, but also that we've got to get out there to the consumer, and that's what this is all about, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I tell my team all the time, here's the meat industry in a single statement. The entire pork industry and everybody in the value chain exists only for one reason: that a consumer walks into a retail store or a food service establishment, they eat pork, they buy it, they eat it, and they like it enough to repeat the purchase.
Yep.
That's it. That's our whole business.
Or at least it should be. At least it should be simple, right? Yeah. Well, yeah, okay. So we're going to go ahead and start landing this plane, but I think a good way of doing that, and something we like to ask most folks on our podcast, is how did you get to where you are right now? And I don't mean via the interstate or Delta Airlines. I mean, how did you get to the position you're in, and becoming a PhD meat scientist?
Yeah. So, well, I'll make this as quick as I can. So, I went to the University of Missouri, thought I was going to go to vet school, took Introduction to Animal Science, ironically with Eric Berg, right? A long time ago.
They put us meatheads in many roles. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So I take the meat science class portion of Intro to Animal Science. I thought, this is pretty interesting. I needed a job. And so a big, strong country boy, right? They signed me up to go work on the kill floor. I started working in meat science, and you know what? My entire life previous to that, I had spent livestock judging, state FFA officer, involved in a lot of things. But the reality is, I grew up in a large, diversified livestock business. I spent my whole life thinking about animals from the outside in. And that business started teaching me to think about animals from the inside out, and start to think about merchandising and quality and primals and cuts and diversification and how we get it out there. And I fell in love with it. And that begat my career into grad school and ultimately a PhD at North Dakota State in meat science. And I went on to academia to teach, which I never thought I would do in a million years, by the way.
Me too.
Here
I am.
Yeah, I worked in extension and teaching heavily for the last 15 years. And I loved every minute of it. I loved working with students. But I will tell you this, I've always been I've been a very big believer in service to whatever you're a part of. So, I grew up in the livestock business. I got heavily involved in boards. So, same way many people get involved in organizations like AMSA, which I've been a member of for a very long time. I was very active at the National Pork Board. I actually served on the board of directors, was chairman of the board. And you just never know how life's going to work out, right? I worked in business, owning our own businesses, and in consulting, and 6 months ago, the opportunity arose to come to Pork Board as Senior Vice President of Market Growth. And they wanted somebody who could think about this entire value chain, farm to plate. And I'm telling you, my background in meat science and animal science prepare me perfectly for that. I have a team of people who are experts in marketing. I have a team of people who are experts in merchandising. My job is to help integrate all of this story together. And, I used to tell my grad students and undergraduate students as well, there really is that thing about doing what you love. It doesn't mean that there won't be miserable days, right?
Yeah. Some days you have to actually work, right?
Yeah, you do. And some days just suck, and that's okay. But what matters is that we're trying to move the needle in the right direction. And so I am very passionate about the meat business and the pork industry. And I didn't say no. I said yes a lot. And that comes with consequences, but it also comes with rewards. I have a family. I have 2 young children. But you know what? It's fun to be part of an active industry like this, where we can all work together on something we're really passionate about. And here I am today. I'm very blessed and just really excited to do what I do and work with people like you and everybody else in the country.
Man, well, that's fantastic. I want to touch on just a couple things before we sign off here. If folks listening want to learn more about some of the stuff that we were talking about, to get a little bit more in depth, there's actually a webinar that Dr. Newman just recently published on the AMSA website. So go to meatscience.org under the publications and resources, and you can find the webinar there. Also, anybody that's interested more in just pork in general, check out the Pork 101 opportunities through the American Meat Science Association as well. You can always reach out at info@meatspad.com. Dr. Newman, thank you so much for this time that you've shared with us. This has been fun. I can't wait for the next time we visit together because I think our conversations will continue quite greatly. You know what? Keep fighting the good fight, man. I sure am. So
Yeah, me too. And yeah, reach out anytime, anyone really. That's what we do. That's literally my job on behalf of pork producers in the U.S. And excited to see you. Hope to see some of you at RMC. It'll be here before we know it.
before you know it, that's right. This coming year in Oklahoma City. So anyway, all right, everyone. Thanks so much, and thanks to Dr. Newman.